Coming up on Good Journeys with Second Mountain.
So I've learned about what actually motivates me, what I actually want out of life. I've learned about my own mental health and going on a journey with that to understand burnout, why I was working the way I worked, and so why I was working so hard and ignoring the signs of burnout and why that was really detrimental, and how I can make sure moving forward that I live a fulfilled and healthy life. And that's my focus from now on.
Welcome to Good Journeys with Second Mountain, the show that explores the trails travelled and lessons learned from some truly extraordinary guests. We're here once again for another good journey. Thank you for joining me, and I'm so pleased to bring you this conversation with my very special guest today. I'm your host, the founder of Second Mountain Comms, Ben Veal. I'm all about helping good people do good. That's what my business does day in and day out, and my guest shares my passion for living and working with purpose. Natalie Luckham is the founder of award-winning BCorp agency Naturally Social, a very proudly purpose-driven entrepreneur, and also the CEO of Wiltshire Digital Drive, a community interest company that's been making a hugely positive difference in the community ever since the first lockdown. I've known Natalie for years and watched her journey, but I have a feeling I'm going to know her a whole lot better after today's chat. Welcome to the show, Natalie. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm really well, Ben. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited, really excited.
It's a pleasure. And for those that aren't watching but are listening, Natalie is a vision in pink, as she always is.
Got to be on brand. And also, pink's just a lovely colour, right?
It is. But, well, the colour of my favourite wrestler, Bret Hitman Hart.
I used to love him.
Yeah, I still do. 35 years on, I still do. But he made neon pink work, as do you.
You really did. Oh, thank you. Thanks very much.
So look, pink is synonymous with your brand. So let's start there. Naturally Social. You've been running this business for coming on to a decade now, which is incredible. Let's be honest, in this market as a small business. Yeah. There are so many agencies out there that are doing social media and offering social media support. What is it about Naturally Social that makes your business special and stand out?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because, since I launched Naturally Social, as you say, 10 years ago, the space has become increasingly crowded. And what makes it difficult for me is education, educating people and potential clients around what makes good social media management, because everybody thinks that, just because they have a Facebook account or they've grown up on TikTok, that they're able to run content strategies for a brand on these platforms. And so what makes us stand above those people is that, and those other agencies, is one, our experience and our proven experience in the sector. And, we're really, really confident with our case studies and the work that we deliver, but also my kind of core values around where I think social media shows up best, because I've always felt that it's a privilege to be able to communicate with this many people in their space. And that's something that we've never been able to do before. In traditional PR and marketing circles, it's very much been on the brand's terms, and they're they're hoping that their content is seen and is published at somebody else's discretion. So if we can have that power in our own hands, we should really treat the space with a little bit of respect. And I've seen a lot of people abuse that trust and that use of social over the years. And that kind of belief really led me to develop Naturally Social into this proud organization that says we want to use our skill set for good. Like, social media should be used as a tool to spread good messages, to communicate with people across the world, to tell them about how certain people and places and services can change their lives. And I don't want to take that for granted. So I don't want to use my skill set to help others make money off of somebody else's misery. Let's put it that way. I would rather elevate good messages and make the society that we live in a better place.
Yeah, well, as the uncle of my favorite superhero would say, with great power comes great responsibility. And
Yeah.
I saw, funnily enough, I saw a post this morning from one of our mutual friends, and he was talking about things that make social media managers cry. And two of the statements were, "My 10-year-old can do this," and "My audience is everyone."
Yes.
So, what are the kind of some of the big challenges you come up against when perhaps a new client is coming to you saying they want you to run their socials? Like, how do you need to, how does your kind of strategic advice help to counsel people towards the right direction?
Yeah, so I think the biggest problem that we have, or some of the biggest issues that we face when talking to clients, is first of all, where does their knowledge base begin? What do they know about social media as a channel? Because if they know the right amount of stuff, they'll realize that social media isn't the only thing that they should be doing. Like, you cannot put all your eggs in one basket and come to us and expect big things and big outcomes just by particularly organic social media. So we start by educating them around that, and then we start to understand what their goals are and what they're looking to achieve, and is this a campaign piece, and who are their audience, and where are those people hanging out, and what are the opportunities, or is this actually filling a resource need? They don't have the skills or expertise in house, and but they do really want to elevate their game online. And once we've understood all of that and we're all really clear on what is it they're trying to do and achieve, then we can start to look at what they're already doing. Should they be there? What are the opportunities on those channels? Um, as an agency, I'm really proud to say that we don't just niche down into one channel, because I think that's quite a dangerous approach. It works for a lot of people, but as you said, like, one size does not fit all. And if we put our time and effort into understanding every channel as much as we can, we're able to then give a better service to our clients to say, okay, you do need to be on YouTube, you should be on TikTok, you don't need to be on X. And we're able to use that knowledge to really craft a bespoke strategy and get them into the right places. So yeah, I would say they're the kind of main things. Is about understanding that social media isn't the be all and end all. It has to form part of a mix, and understanding their education, taking them on a journey of understanding what it's actually capable of doing, and then starting work on the right channels ultimately for them.
You mentioned when you were speaking, but I picked up on the word organic. Like, is it possible we're speaking in 2024, is it possible to actually make good gains on social media now without paying for the
Yeah,
privilege?
yes, definitely. I will always be a cheerleader for organic social content because it's been my bread and butter for so long, particularly before I started the agency when I was working in public sector comms. But it's changed a lot. And again, if you can manage people's expectations, then you can help them to see where and how this is going to work for them. You know, it's always, and you'll hear this all the time, but it is quality over quantity. You do not need to be posting every day on something like Instagram or Facebook. But if you make the content the right stuff at the right time, then it will work for you. And rather than putting this pressure on thinking, I need to be posting today, I need to say something, I need to do this, da 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 da, take some time to sit back and go, well, what do we have to talk about? What do we have that we can share? When's the right moment to share this? And then the last question is, how will we share it? And that's where you make the most gains in organic. It's not about, you know, text posts and how creative can we get? It's not just a picture anymore. It's what do the algorithms prefer? So let's use those tactics to get the most out of this message that we want to share.
And you've had some like really big organic successes. And funnily enough, you and I were sitting down having a coffee together when you got your first, I think it was your first 1 million views on TikTok, wasn't it, for a particular post? Is that right, Nat?
Yeah. It was a
Yeah.
million. It's now on 2.2 million.
Wow. And that was
Yeah.
a really, really interesting post because which I think also it kind of dovetails these two things that you're talking about in terms of having fun with a platform, but also being really strategic and topical. Can you tell us about that post and why that has gone and continues to go so viral?
Yeah. Again, like, and I will put my hands, I would say sometimes the social space just baffles me because I can put in so much time and effort into strategies that do well, but they perhaps don't go the way that I imagined them to go. And then times when I create stuff that's just, it's a gut instinct and it's like, we need to talk about this and share this message. They're often the things that do the best, and they do the best because they're relatable. And that's what you always have to remember is the more relatable you can make this, the better it's going to be. And there is a whole debate on, particularly on TikTok at the moment, about Gen Z versus millennial culture, because we are the two cultures that's showing up the most on digital media platforms. And we are basically designing the way that these channels are being used. So, um, through some kind of not frustrations, but some experiences of running an agency and the difference between demographics around use of phone calls. Just some people like using phones, some people don't. That was a big frustration for me at the time, particularly in agency land. That coupled with a meme that was trending of forgotten now. Who was it?
Theresa May.
Theresa May, thank you. I was going to say Liz Truss. I was like, what's not Liz Truss? Theresa May. Um, it was like this just presents the perfect opportunity to share my frustration or share my message, a relatable message, to tap into a trend, which was this Gen Z millennial culture, and use a meme that was gaining traction. And you put all those three things together, and that's when you create something viral. It's that, we talk about entertaining, education, or inspire when you're looking at those content pillars. If you can find something that does all of those, then you are onto something big. And that's what I feel really happened with that piece of content. It caught the audience at the right time. It was super relatable. And it was a meme that people were seeing. And it it sparked so much conversation. There's so much opinion there. There's so much experience. I've really enjoyed seeing people's reaction to it. And the thing is, it kind of keeps getting bumped. It'll go a little bit quieter, and then somebody will say something and it will just start going around the houses again. Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch.
I think why that post has done so well is because, as you say, you're talking about two different cultures, but in terms of, millennials versus Gen Z, but you're also talking about this change that we've had in culture in the last few years since COVID, really, because the piece is kind of specifically talking about reluctance to telephone clients or journalists to follow up for things or to sell in things,
Yeah,
which you and I having a long tenured PR background and being old veterans at this, that's what we used to do day in and day out. And I can't say I ever particularly enjoyed phoning up a national journalist and pitching in a story, but I overcame my fears and did it because I knew that's what I needed to do.
yeah,
These days, rare is the day that I ever pick up a phone to a journalist now because they're just not there.
yeah.
They're
I
not in
know.
newsrooms since COVID. They're not there, and they don't want to be phoned. Like none of us do. So
Yeah,
it's interesting that I think what you also tapped into there isn't just a generational thing, but also how the media landscape has changed. But actually now, I mean, I've had my best successes in PR in the last 3 years through two-line email pitches,
mm,
compared to when I used to craft a really good phone sale pitch and send the whole press release. I pique journalist interest now via a couple of lines. Can I interest you about this? You get the hook and then you sell them the story.
yeah,
It's a different world now. And I think that's where that piece was so interesting. But also, as you say, some frustrations and learnings from being a business owner. And you've been a creative entrepreneur for a number of years now. What have been some of the learnings from being a business owner? What have you learned about yourself, what you enjoy and also what you don't enjoy?
yeah. Oh, and if I had taken the time to write everything down, we'd have been here for a very long time. Um, Part of me loves the journey. I have loved the journey and the learnings, and I have learned the most about myself over the last 8 years. It's been exhausting, fascinating, humbling, enjoyable. Um, some of the things that I've learned the most is um, leadership and management are completely different. And you can be a good manager and not a good leader, and vice versa. And understanding the difference in those two things is super important to find the right people in the business. Um, Everybody has different motivations. that was a big, like, and it seems really simple, right? But for me, when I thought about growing the business and employing people, in my head, these people were kind of like just little dots. Is the only way I could describe it. Like, right, they were dots in seats, and like, this is how I'm going to grow it. Um, but actually, when it came to fruition, it was like, oh, these people have completely different needs, wants, desires, motivators. And now my job is not just about delivering the work for the clients. My job is now about ensuring these people have their needs, wants, desires, motivators met and are kept interested. And that's now my role. And for me, that's when things started to become really interesting around like self-development and leadership skills. So yeah, I think the people piece for me has been the most fascinating. And, alongside that, there are key lessons that you can learn in any business, right? That I've developed and understood and seen in practice. Like when you say you're going to do something, do it. Communication is absolutely key. Even if you're late on doing something or if you have not completed something, tell somebody that because nobody is a mind reader. And just because I know that I've done this piece of work or I'm working on this piece of work, my client might not. And they may feel anxious. So that relationship management is massive. And for me, I don't feel you can over communicate these sorts of things. But yeah, that's kind of one of the lessons that I've learned as well. And then for me, about what I've learned about myself is like so much. So I've learned about what actually motivates me, what I actually want out of life. I've learned about my own mental health and going on a journey with that to understand burnout, why I was working the way I worked, and so why I was working so hard and ignoring the signs of burnout and why that was really detrimental, and how I can make sure moving forward that I live a fulfilled and healthy life. And that's my focus from now on.
Thank you so much for being with us for this inspiring conversation today on the Good Journeys with Second Mountain podcast. We'll return to our guest interview very soon, but I want to just take a few seconds now to thank our partners on the show, Resilient Leaders Elements, and tell you all about the positive change they're making in the world. We live in uncertain times where the only constant is change. Resilience has never mattered more, and it's much more than just a buzzword to the team at RLE. Leadership is about resilience, and RLE are focused on making world-class leadership development available to all, training people worldwide to build the skill sets needed to become resilient leaders. RLE's highly respected Resilient Leaders Development Programme is a bespoke development tool that's perfect for leaders of all levels, and you can sign up right now. So if you want to turbocharge your leadership growth and become more resilient both in the workplace and in your personal life, there's never been a better time to start your journey. Visit resilientleaderselements.com now to find out more. Yeah, I mean, look, one of the reasons we're speaking today is because you've always been someone that's presented so well online and always looked very glamorous and put together and professional. But you were very brave last summer in sharing the other side of you and the burnout and the depression and the things that were really getting to you. Can you talk a bit about that and also what the reaction was to you being so open about what it's like to actually run a business?
Yeah, do you know what? When I started employing people, before I built my team, I was really open and I was very much the front of the camera and talking about my experiences. And then when I started to employ people, I stopped doing that because I almost felt like I didn't want them to judge me and think, oh God, I work for a boss who's so like open-mouthed or whatever, like loose-lipped. And so I kind of just started, all I would do was talk about the positives and the good. And I would just say, show up no matter how bad I was feeling. And I like smiling and putting on this face. But I knew that something wasn't okay because one day I'd be completely up, the next I'd be completely down, just naturally from running a business. And through COVID, everything was getting on top of me. It was becoming really stressful, losing clients, losing leads, trying to develop people. trying to nurture people through a global pandemic as well, when they're all experiencing stuff in their own lives, whilst at the same time I was experiencing stuff in my life. I had just exited a emotionally abusive relationship, and I was trying to build myself back again whilst running this business. I had spent like a good number of years putting all my time into the business because that was becoming my safe space as well. And it all just got too much. And I could find enough energy to be like, I know that we're just like one moment away from this being a huge agency and me actually taking money for myself, because up to this point, I was the lowest paid person in my business and had been for years because I want everybody else to be okay.
Mm.
And again, going back to your saying, what I learned was like, put yourself first because you have to. Because actually everybody's again got their own motivators. So when people would leave and move on to their next role, I was taking it really personally. And I remember just it got to a point last year where a member of staff had handed their notice in because they'd found another opportunity. That came shortly after us losing our biggest client, which meant that I had to take this tough decision to get a contract role and reduce my hours working in my own business, because actually I wanted to keep my team employed as opposed to making any redundancies or any further redundancies. And when that staff member or those staff members left, it just all kind of fell apart. And I remember collapsing in my bathroom, crying, and just saying, I can't do this anymore. What is the point? Why am I doing? And that's something that I'd said for a number of years. So yeah, it was, and there's loads of other stuff that had been going on and loads of feelings. And I went to see my therapist who I'd been working with over a number of years. And I said, I've got these noises in my head and like, I feel like I'm bipolar. I'm really quite scared and all this sort of thing. And, when ended up, the doctors prescribed me with antidepressants to support me with this, mild depression or depression. There's no way in belittling it or over kind of egging it. And I'm now going on a journey of an ADHD diagnosis, because actually some of the symptoms and the things that I was describing were flagging to the therapist that there's probably something there. So I'm now feeling a lot better because I feel heard, and I feel like I've expressed it.
Mm.
And going back to your question, when I decided to eventually post on my socials, like, this is what stress looks like, and do not ignore your body. And I'd had this massive reaction on my skin at that point. Everybody was really supportive, and I wasn't expecting that, but it felt really cathartic to get it out because, as you said, I'd spent so long showing up, being the positive, being this, being that, being professional, and I had to just be vulnerable again.
Mm.
And being vulnerable allowed me to start building back, because I had removed that kind of expectation that I'd probably just put on myself. And yeah, it was really cathartic and has allowed me to really be here today chatting to you.
Yeah, I remember when I shared my story about losing my job, and it took me a whole year to talk about redundancy, because wrapped into redundancy was sharing my story of anxiety and depression, and as a high functioning, PR person, we don't have weakness. We are there for clients to always be on.
Yeah.
To always be there, ready for creative ideas, ready for positivity, ready with the energy and our can-do attitude. That's what we do as a profession. And it's a very good reason why so many people in the PR industry are really struggling with mental health. And it's one of the hardest industries to work in.
Yeah.
Because it's not sustainable. And I sustained it for 15 years, but I was a high functioning person with anxiety and depression. It was only in 2021 that after my life kind of hit rock bottom, that I finally went on medication and started to get a handle on it. And it's an ongoing battle, but
Yeah.
it makes a difference. I think when you get to a position like you've reached, to a degree like I've reached, we have a responsibility to share our voice. We've only got one life on this earth, and we do both have pretty decent social media followings and quite a lot of connections. And I think when someone like yourself talks about that, it has a lot of power. And hopefully what it does is encourages younger people entering the industry to hopefully not make some of the mistakes that we've made.
Yeah.
Because I spent so many years masking my behavior, going into the office, again, being the kind of manager. I'd always walk in, I could have had an awful morning, walk in, morning everyone, how's everyone doing? And
Yeah.
everyone else might be grumpy, but I always felt it was my responsibility to go in and be the chirpy one.
Yeah.
And that's why I love working for myself now in my little cabin here, because actually I don't have to do that every day.
Yeah.
If I'm in a grump in the morning, I can go and get a coffee and just be a grump in the morning and not have to turn it on. I said this to you privately, but I'll say this now. I admired your bravery for it. I imagine it took a lot of time to think, can I do this? And a lot of self-doubt about sharing it, because it was such a striking image, and it was so different to the Natalie that we've got to know over these years. And
Yeah.
I think it was really powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the other thing to note about that, it's not even just young people. For me, I think, as you just quite rightly said, it's our generation who are coming, who have come from the generation before us, who are overworked constantly. We need to change that narrative, and we need to all look after each other to say we can have bad days. Let's talk about those bad days. As you say, I didn't even know there was such thing as like high functioning depression until I started following a psychiatrist on TikTok. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. When I open my LinkedIn account, it's full of how great am I? How wonderful am I? And that is so detrimental for me personally in terms of my own mental health. And I just stopped looking.
Mm.
And, we must embrace failure. We must get comfortable with talking about the bad days, because, as you say, everybody has them. And all entrepreneurial business and, career paths are not straightforward. We're all going to have bad days and good. And I think we need to normalize that.
But it's interesting because I feel the same as you about social media, but my job is social media, like yours.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for how you moderate? Because you can't not be on social media. It is what you do for a job. I can't not be, because it's what I do for a job. How do you balance it so that it's not so detrimental?
Well, for me, having a team of people is helpful because somebody else is running the socials for the business and somebody else is going to be responsible for the socials for the clients. But what I do as a team is I make sure that everybody understands how to switch their privacy settings on, how to set their timers so they have switch off points in terms of how long they've been on their phone. So really being boundaried with looking at their phone for X amount of time. And I can only help to share that narrative. For me, I don't look at my phone past 9:30. I have worked hard to get over this constant need to be posting or to be scrolling and sharing and trying to be more present. And then I set aside time weekly and monthly and daily actually, to check in on the latest updates on platforms when I see them, test them out. And that's how I manage the keeping up with the latest and ensuring stuff's being posted and keeping myself sane.
Yeah, you're making me feel very jealous having a team. I think that's why I need someone to take my phone away from me. Look, I want to also talk about some of the amazing positives of your journey, especially in recent years. So against all the challenges you faced, you also had a remarkable achievement in that you became a BCorp with Naturally Social last year, which is amazing. I know how much work goes into that and what it means for you. What difference has that made to you as a business?
It was really important to us that we became BCorp certified, because I've always been, as I said, an organization that talks about social media for social good. And it was our USP for a long time. And then through the pandemic, there was a lot of people starting to flip their business models, because there was a driving consumer demand that said, actually, we want to buy from people with better business ethics. And it became very hard then to see through the sea of people changing their LinkedIn bios or their Instagram bios saying we provide these services for ethical businesses. And so I was like, okay, how do we demonstrate, particularly as a service business, not product, that we don't just talk the talk, but we walk the walk, and that it is fundamental to the core of how we operate. And I remembered a mentor of mine from many years ago saying about the B Corp certification. And at this point, I had a team around me, and I thought, now's the time. Now's the time that we need to. And so what it did for us was it cemented the message that we are purpose-led and purpose-driven, and that we want to use our skill set for good. And actually also shows that, we have been externally verified in that all the processes that we follow and the policies around our people and how we operate are ethically sound. And that was really important. We're not greenwashing. We're not just saying it because it's a trend and we use it to make money. Like it steers the ship.
Mm. I know a lot of people kind of listening from my audience will be really on board with the B Corp message and might be thinking about going for it themselves, but daunted by it. I mean, how hard was the process, and how much time did it take you to become certified?
It was really hard, actually, in that it's just very lengthy. Um, Again, I was really fortunate. We didn't use a B Corp consultant. We didn't feel the need to. So our business manager took the process on herself, and that was her project. I had previously submitted an impact assessment on the site, and we'd scored around the 70 mark, I think, but you need 80 minimum to become certified. And then they also advise that you get a few points kind of above that. And actually, we just broke it down into sections and had like 90-day kind of goals and checkups to go like what have you learned from this bit, and what gains can be had, and do we already have a policy in place for that, and will this section here accelerate our desire to do this, because we've always talked about it but now's probably the time to do that. So we learned a lot about, actually we've already got a lot of this stuff in place, we just need to pull the evidence together. And I think all in all it took probably like 8 months to a year to get it all together and submitted. And then from submission to certification, it's about 18 months.
It's time very well spent. I mean, you and I have spoken, privately about the amount of, PR agencies and marketing agencies that we spotted during 2020 that suddenly, as you said, pivoted their offerings and suddenly became incredibly ethical when one would question whether they were operating ethically beforehand.
Yeah.
And I think it's the key here is really doubling down in terms of, you can't really get around B Corp, can you? That's the thing. It's such a robust process.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to take you to some amazing destinations. Because as you say, it's that extra step, isn't it, in terms of who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Yeah. And also I think it's really worth noting, as you said, and again, when we've talked about it in the past, if it doesn't fit with you, don't do it. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. But you can always do the assessment for free, and just to get a feel of like where you are, and also to prompt you in things that you could do to make sure that you are operating in ways that are better for people and planet. You don't have to have this badge because everybody else is doing it. But you can use the foundations of what's there to make sure that your business practices are aligned and better for all around. And then you can look at other certifications.
Yeah, I think the thing is, most of us have a desire, don't we, to hopefully make the world slightly better through the work we do. Like, even if it's the tiny nth degree of change in our lifetimes, I don't think there's many people that want it, that are ultimately driven by money and status. They might be early drivers when you're younger, but as you get older, it's legacy. For me, it's legacy. It's conversations like this, it's social impact, it's helping people, have all superseded my desire for earning money or being seen by others in a certain way. It just doesn't matter to me anymore.
Yeah, and it's fulfillment, right? It's like nobody gets out of bed wanting to do a job that they don't enjoy or a job that they're bad at. People want to fundamentally come back from a day's work feeling like they've contributed and that they've done something. And that spans like no matter where you're working, whether that's in, a food chain, fast food chain, in retail, whatever it is, predominantly you want to feel satisfied with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that I think that's true for everybody now, as it always has been. And it's being driven now by a lot of ethical consumerism as well, and generations who want to actually look after the planet now.
Thanks once again for being with us for another inspiring conversation on the Good Journeys pod. At Second Mountain, we firmly believe that resilience lies at the heart of all good journeys, and our friends over at Resilient Leaders Elements are deeply passionate about making world-class leadership development available to all. RLE now has an exciting opportunity for those who share the belief that anyone can be a resilient leader. This is open to anyone who'd value an opportunity to collaborate with like-minded professionals from around the world. Their global Resilient Leaders Elements accreditation programme gives you the chance to help others become more confident in who they are and what they do as a leader. The programme is facilitated by an experienced Resilient Leaders consultant who will guide you through the journey step by step. You'll then be welcomed into a worldwide network of like-minded resilient leadership specialists. So if you're passionate about developing resilient leadership in yourself and others, why not consider training to become a Resilient Leaders consultant? Visit resilientleaderselements.com now and find out more. Well, let's talk about the other hat you wear when it comes to looking after the planet. So as well as being the founder of Naturally Social, you're also the CEO of Wiltshire Digital Drive, which is just this incredible initiative. And I know as we're recording now, you've distributed just over 3,000 refurbished devices to people in need. What can you tell us about Wiltshire Digital Drive and especially how it started?
Yeah, so to put it into context, about 19 million people, adults over the age of 16 in the UK, are suffering from some form of digital poverty. And with the rapid change in technology and how it works, more and more of those people are getting further and further behind. And what I mean behind, and when we talk about digital poverty, it means unable to work, unable to contribute to society, feeling isolated. They can't afford broadband data, so they can't complete things like online banking. They can't talk to their loved ones. They can't access government services. That's huge, and that's a massive problem. And during the pandemic, we started addressing one tiny part of that problem, which was so many children were part of families who did not have digital devices. They may have had a phone in their house, and that was it, one mobile, one smartphone, or one laptop. But during the pandemic, everybody was working from home, and every child in the country was being homeschooled. So education was suffering and the economy was suffering. And we were like, okay, so we picked up on a tweet for a client of ours, a sixth form careers advisor was asking a business for a laptop so they could support a young person to apply for university. And as I said, like no laptops were available. So my previous co-director dug out a laptop from his cupboard and said, I'll refurbish this and we can give it to her. So we did, and that turned into 155 laptops being found and called for from the community and being refurbished and redistributed to 155 people. And then as furlough started coming to an end, we said this problem is massive. And if we set this up as a separate organisation, we could potentially seek funding and then open the doors to businesses who have end-of-life IT tech, and we could also have a much greater impact on the environment by stopping this kit from going to landfill. And then it expanded and it grew and it developed and rolled into this huge beast that I'm incredibly proud of, and it really does fill me with joy, but it's huge.
I think what's lovely is it comes from that time when, I was interviewing a few months ago, John Alexander, who wrote the book Citizens, and he talks a lot in that book about the early stages of the pandemic and that lovely citizen-led outpouring we had when everyone felt like they were in it together, when we were truly locked down and all these little community groups set up. And, my village we were getting things through the door saying, if you need food, if you need anyone to go out for medicine, just phone this number, we'll do that for you. It tapped into that real innate desire that we actually have as human beings to help one another. And then as that's gone on, obviously, how that's morphed for you has been from the early beginnings of a digital, the lockdown, to supporting Ukrainian refugees, displaced families in Ukraine, and now weathering what was a cost of living crisis and what now is a fully fledged recession. Thank you, Rishi. So, you're really kind of, you've jumped from one crisis to the next, to the next, to the next, and heaven only knows where we go next.
Yeah.
But the central foundation of that is this need in a hyper connected world for us all to have the tools we need to connect, doesn't it?
It really is. And so many of us take it for granted. And I was aware of the digital divide from a young age, from when I first started in social media, really. But because people could access, internet cafes and schools and colleges with IT kit, it wasn't really talked about. And it was the pandemic that really amplified what digital poverty meant and how this digital divide was growing. And as you say, what started off supporting schools suddenly was well, that's not going to go away now that we're out of lockdown and the pandemic's gone. Actually, this whole situation is worse, as you say, with the war in the Ukraine and with the cost of living and recession, people aren't suddenly going to be able to buy laptops and buy data and buy lovely phones to do the stuff that they want to do on and they need to do on, because so many other organizations and government establishments are moving everything online because it's cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got one part of the society pushing this way, and what it's doing is it's making the rest of the people go that way who can't afford it. It's huge. It is massive. There are so many things that we do online that so many of us take for granted that I think, we have to just revisit that. And that's why we work really hard to try and stop as much kit from ending in places that doesn't need to.
Yeah, and you mentioned end of life IT. I mean, I think one of the things that's really changed in the last few years, and this is where ethical consumerism comes in, is I'm not sure there's that same desire that there used to be to get new all the time. Like my son who's 10, keeps mocking me because I've got an iPhone 12. And I'm like, it works. It's fine. I'm running multiple brands from this phone. It is fine. I'm not upgrading it. He's like, you should have an iPhone 15. I'm like, I don't need one. Whereas me 10 years ago would have probably thought I need the new one. Now
Yeah.
I take huge pride in the fact that I'm going to run this device into the ground before I
Yeah.
upgrade it, because I don't need a new one.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. And I think what's very special about what you've done here is so many of these devices which aren't at the end of their life, but they're at the end of their life within a business's operations where it makes good financial sense often to refresh your IT every 2 years. It's good for tax. It's good for employees. It makes sense to have that churn of IT. But you're talking about computers and devices that could have a decade left in them. And one of the most incredible things you're doing through this is, you've saved so much from going into landfill, haven't you, by refurbishing it and giving it extra life?
Yeah, I think we're approaching 10,000 devices given to us in 3 years. And that's not just laptops and that's not just computers. And we can't refurbish everything because it may be far too old. But what we do is we work with recycling partners who have a zero landfill policy, who will then break these pieces down and strip out the precious metals that then get pushed back into the manufacturing stream, which then reduces the need for virgin mining, which means that the planet is protected and we can continue to model this kind of circular economy and stop taking, as you say, that kind of greed thing. And yeah, when we take some of those PCs that we can reuse, we're not just giving them one life. We are making sure, as you say, with your phone, when it's no longer needed, it can come back to us, and then we give it out to another person, and then another person, and another person, until it can no longer be used, and then we can take the pieces from it and put it back out to manufacturing. So yeah, it's just like you said, it just touches all corners of society.
Well, it's the very idea of a circular economy, isn't it? In its
Yeah.
purest sense, what you're doing.
Definitely, definitely. It is, yeah, stopping the need to draw down on resources of the planet and instead make use of what we've already got and extending the life. So refurbish, recycle, reuse, refurbish, recycle, reuse.
And I mean, the growth's been amazing. You know, you're obviously talking the big numbers here, 10,000 in, 3,000 refurbished and out to community. It's incredible. But I'd imagine that it's actually some of the testimonials you receive back that actually make it really, really worth doing. Are there any that kind of stand out in terms of feedback you've had from the community for devices?
Yeah, and we have to remember that we work directly with organizations who refer people in. So we don't tend to work directly with the end user, but when we do start to see stuff come through on the odd occasion, we know it's making a massive difference. You know, people who have moved here from the Ukraine are saying, thank you so much. With this, I'm able to talk to my family and friends back home. I can now run my business, start a business, contribute to the economy. Children's faces lighting up because they're suddenly able to do their homework and do their studies on a laptop and they've never had one before. People who are fleeing domestic violence, who have left everything behind, and we're hearing that this has made a massive difference to them rebuilding their lives. So yeah, it's wonderful to know that the difference is that we're able to have that impact and make that difference.
And it's also supporting SEN young people, isn't it, as well? Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, definitely. So we were really fortunate to have some key corporate partners who have given us specific types of laptops that are much more durable. And we've been able to link up with SEN schools and projects to say, we've got some digital devices that are quite sturdy. They're bigger than normal ones, so they're really accessible. You know, would these be of use and can these help your students? And obviously, they've said yes, and they've made huge differences. So yeah, the special educational needs comes in all shapes and sizes, doesn't it?
Mm.
From physical to learning disabilities, and yeah, there are young people at school who might struggle with attention deficit, they might struggle with dyslexia, and we can actually work with those specific cases and those schools to match up with a machine that suits them and helps them learn.
Yeah, and then bringing it all back full circle into your life and your own journey. I mean, how wonderful is it that you're helping some of those children when at the same time you're on your own journey of neurodiversity and learning about your own ADHD and
Yeah,
yeah, pretty
massive.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes it more relatable and it makes it, easy for me to understand the needs um, of people. And yeah, no, it's beautiful. It makes me happy.
Well, where do you hope it will go? I mean, obviously it's Wiltshire Digital Drive, but I get the sense that it could be even bigger than that as the years go on.
Yeah, I'd say there's the appetite for it to go a lot bigger, get a lot bigger. There's the demand and the need for it. There are very few organizations who are doing what we are doing, but there are a couple of big organizations that kind of touch all areas of the UK. So yeah, we'll see. But I would love to see it as a model rolled out count in different counties. Um, and I would love to continue on the mission to make sure that everybody is digitally connected and that their lives are ultimately enriched by that.
Well, I love what you're doing. I'm so appreciative of your time today. I'm appreciative of your friendship, Nat, and I just I just think what you're doing is incredible, and it's going to be wonderful to see how that journey goes for you. But the last thing I always like to ask, on your journey so far, what are you proudest of?
I'm proudest of getting to where I am today. I would say actually still doing it, having the determination and the resilience, developing the resilience to still be here and to still do it. Um, and yeah, I'm proud of me for taking the risk and sticking it out.
And one last thing, as the social queen, what are your socials? Plug away how my audience can connect with you.
Quite simply, we are on everything. LinkedIn, X, Threads, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, and we are at NLY Social. And I'd love for people to get in touch and follow us.
And Wiltshire Digital Drive, how can we connect with that?
Yeah, Wiltshire Digital Drive primarily are on Twitter and Facebook and a little bit of Insta at the moment. And we are at Wilts Digi Drive, DIGI Drive.
So everyone follow, connect, celebrate, and if you can, connect with Natalie to find ways to support Wiltshire Digital Drive, because it's doing amazing work. So look, that wraps up another good journey today. Thank you so much, Natalie, for your time. I'm so pleased to know you and be on this purpose-driven journey together. And I'm looking forward to following what comes next on your crazy road of entrepreneurship, because it really is an up and down journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Thanks for having me on today, Ben. It's been, wonderful. And really appreciate your friendship and support as well. So thank you.
You're so welcome. And on the subject of thanks, thank you to Jeff Easton from Tool Lake Productions for bringing this conversation to life. This show, like so many podcasts, relies on all of you to grow. It's a very crowded space. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it, please like it. And most importantly, let us know what you think. Natalie and I would love to hear from you. Use the hashtag GoodJourneysPod. So that's it for another one. I've been Ben Veal. My guest has been Natalie Luckham from Naturally Social. This has been Good Journeys to the Second Mountain. So until next time, keep climbing together, and I'll see you all soon.